I used to think that building a happy family was like pouring a strong concrete foundation. Set it well enough, and the house would stand tall through storms. For nearly 18 years, that belief held true. We lived in a tidy little Cape Cod-style house just outside of Raleigh, North Carolina. Our golden retriever, Baxter, barked every morning as I left for work. Our two boys, Ryan and Logan, ages 10 and 8, played baseball in the backyard, while my wife, Rachel, tended the flowers she adored. From the outside, we were picture perfect. And maybe that was the problem. Perfect things hide the deepest cracks. It started 3 months ago. Rachel, my wife of nearly 2 decades, began changing, small things at first. She started taking her phone into the bathroom. She'd glance over her shoulder before replying to texts. She smiled more at the screen than at me. She claimed long work nights at Palmetto Insurance, always with her close colleague, Tara Grayson. Late again with the Sanders file, she'd mutter, brushing past me, leaving a trace of expensive perfume and a lipstick shade I'd never seen before. I wasn't the jealous type. I never snooped through her messages or followed her car. I was the quiet one, the solid one, the dependable one. But even solid ground trembles before an earthquake. One Sunday morning I skipped church claiming a headache. Truth was, I couldn't stand another sermon about honesty and family values while pretending I wasn't unraveling inside. I went to Lowe's instead. Something about the smell of lumber and aisles of tools always scented me. That's where I saw him, Derek Grayson, Tara's husband. The guy was rough around the edges, grease on his hands, a mechanic who always had a sly joke ready at neighborhood BBQs. "Tom," he said, nodding toward the rat trap in my hand. "Infestation?" "Maybe," I replied. "You?" "Just trying to keep the damn raccoons out of my garage. Small talk, harmless." Until it wasn't. Somewhere between tool brands and sports banter, Derek dropped the bomb. "Shame you can't." "Go on that cruise next month," he said, grabbing a can of engine degreaser. "What cruise?" I asked, my blood turning cold. He gave me a puzzled look. "The Caribbean one? The all-girls getaway?" "Tara said Rachel told her you couldn't get time off, that you were fine with her going without you." I couldn't respond, not immediately. That afternoon we ended up at a Wendy's, sitting in a near-empty booth while our wives sang hymns at church and our kids fidgeted in pews. 2 grown men sipping burnt coffee, piecing together a puzzle neither of us wanted to see clearly. "She started working late 6 months ago," Derek said, eyes fixed on his untouched fries. "Got a new phone, never lets it out of her hand. Joined a gym she doesn't even go to. Rachel's been buying dresses she never wears in front of me," I added quietly, "and lingerie. Tag still on. Says it's for confidence at work." We looked at each other, the silence louder than any accusation. "You think they're meeting someone?" I asked finally. Derek didn't even blink. "I think they already have," I nodded slowly. "Then we start digging tomorrow." When I got home, the house smelled like lavender and lemon, the scent of comfort. Rachel was humming in the bedroom, packing for the cruise. I watched her fold swimsuits and sundresses, her movements methodical, efficient. But what struck me wasn't what she said. It was what she didn't. No enthusiastic rundown of excursions, no kisses on my cheek, no, "I wish you were coming." Every trip we ever took, she used to plan like it was a world tour. Now she packed like a stranger. "Going on a secret mission. You need help with that?" I asked from the doorway, pretending to stretch. "I'm good," she said without looking up. "Just some last-minute things." When she stepped into the bathroom, I moved. At the bottom of her suitcase, under a rolled-up sundress I'd never seen before, lay a bright orange bikini, still tagged, sexy, tropical, and certainly not for lounging with girlfriends. Buried in the corner, a black mesh pouch caught my eye. I opened it. 20 condoms. Not just safety. Not just in case. 20. Like a soldier packing ammo for war. I didn't scream. I didn't rage. I just sat on the bed, the pouch in my hand, the truth settling over me like a cold mist. Whatever this cruise was, it wasn't about relaxation. It was a betrayal with a beach view. That night I called my parents. Asked if the boys could stay with them at the farm. They were thrilled. The boys were ecstatic. "Grandpa says we get to ride the tractor," Ryan shouted, dragging a duffel bag down the hallway. I looked over at Rachel. She didn't even flinch. That night, as I watched her sleep beside me, I realized something terrifying. I didn't know the woman in my bed anymore. And tomorrow Derek and I would start digging, and we'd dig until we hit the bottom of this rotten lie. Monday morning arrived like a cold slap to the face. Rachel had already left early for one last pre-cruise meeting at the office. The air in our house felt stale, like the breath had been sucked out of it. I walked through the living room, pausing briefly by the family photo on the mantel. Smiles, sunlight, all lies. Then I grabbed my keys and drove straight to Derek's garage. He was already outside, smoking a cigarette he didn't seem to be enjoying. His eyes were bloodshot. He hadn't slept either. "She's gone?" I asked. He nodded, flicking ash onto the driveway. "Left 10 minutes ago, all dolled up like she's heading to Vegas, not a boat." We didn't speak for a minute. Just stood there, two men in the middle of a slow-motion implosion. "She's not even pretending anymore," he finally muttered. She kissed me on the cheek like I was her goddamn uncle. I let out a bitter laugh. Rachel didn't even say goodbye, just left the boys' breakfast on the table and walked out. Derek threw the cigarette onto the concrete and crushed it under his boot. "Let's do this." We started with what we knew. They were leaving for the cruise Wednesday. Girls-only getaway out of Miami, 7 nights Caribbean loop. We checked credit card statements, tracked down the cruise booking confirmation in her email. She forgot to delete the reservation PDF from her downloads folder. Amateurs. The names were there. Rachel Bennett and Greta Grayson. Booking number. Cabin assignments, deck level. Then something caught my eye. Cabins 312 and 314. Directly next to each other. Not random placements, not just friends traveling. Derek grunted. "That's not the layout they showed me when she first brought up this trip." Next step, figuring out who was staying with them. Derek had an old contact in HR at Palmetto Insurance, Eli Carver, the kind of guy who owed Derek more than a few favors from their high school glory days. One call, one promise of beer and hush. Money. And we had the company's vacation request sheet emailed straight to us. 2 other names stood out. Matt Clayton and Brent Kessler, both mid-30s, both recently divorced. Both worked in sales. Different departments, but always found a way to collaborate. Vacation dates, identical to Rachel and Greta. Cabin numbers, 311 and 315. Our wives were sandwiched between them. Derek slammed his hand on the hood of his truck. "They're not even trying to hide it." I nodded, my mouth dry. "This isn't an accident, this is premeditated." We needed more. Evidence. Hard proof. Enough to make sure they couldn't gaslight us later. So we drove to Seabreeze. Travel, the agency where Rachel booked the trip. I knew the owner, Naomi Fox. She helped us plan our honeymoon years ago, back when I believed in forever. She wasn't behind the front desk when we walked in, but the young receptionist's smile faded quickly when she saw Derek's face. "Need to speak to Naomi," he said calmly, though his tone left no room for argument. 5 minutes later, she appeared. Elegant, composed, eyes flickering with recognition. "Tom, Derek, this is unexpected." "We're here for information," I said, "and before you say you can't give it, understand that we already know enough, we're just filling in the blanks." She looked between us, face tight. "You're talking about the cruise." "You tell me," Derek said. "Who exactly did you book for cabins 311 to 315? Naomi sighed, leaning on the counter. "I'm not proud of this," she said quietly. "But yes, Rachel, Greta, Matt, and Brent are booked. Back-to-back cabins, they requested proximity." "Did you know what they were planning?" I asked. She shook her head. "Not the details, but I knew something wasn't right. I've seen this pattern before." I narrowed my eyes. "What pattern?" "Wives who come in together, asking for separate cabins but coordinating bookings with single men. They call it a freedom cruise. Some twisted therapy for bored spouses. They think of it like Vegas. What happens on the ship stays there." I felt sick. "Why didn't you say anything?" Derek asked. Naomi met his gaze. "Because I didn't want to believe Greta was that kind of woman, and because I didn't want to blow up lives without certainty. Now we had it. Certainty. And anger to match. We left the agency without another word. Back in Derek's garage, we stared at the printouts, names, cabin layouts, phone records, everything. It looked like a war room, because it was. "So what's the move?" Derek asked, arms crossed. "We follow them," I said. "To Miami?" "No." I pointed to the itinerary. "We fly to Jamaica, Montego Bay. The cruise docks there for 8 hours on Friday. That's our window." Derek let out a breath. "We'll need to be invisible." "I'll book everything. Fake names, burner phones, the works. You handle the kids." He nodded slowly. "I'll ask my sister to watch them. She loves having them around. They won't even notice we're gone." We didn't say much after that. Just planned, quietly, with the precision of men who had nothing left to lose. That night, I couldn't sleep. Rachel was lying beside me, her breathing soft, peaceful, and all I could think about was what she would do once she was out of reach, out of guilt, out of consequence. But she was wrong about that, because I was coming for the truth, and this time, I wouldn't be the man she could lie to with a kiss and a smile. We landed in Montego Bay on Thursday night, 2 men with backpacks and burner phones, checking into a no-frills motel half a mile from the port. Derek didn't say much as we unpacked. I could tell the weight of what we were doing was starting to press on him. Me? I had already crossed the threshold. My conscience had been packed away the moment I zipped up Rachel's suitcase, with those condoms still inside. By sunrise, we were dressed like tourists, Hawaiian shirts, sunglasses, camera slung over my neck. Our fake names, Jake Martin and Chris Doyle, checked out fine at the front gate. We walked onto the dock like any other day trippers joining an excursion. The cruise ship loomed above us, all polished chrome and ocean luxury. Decks stacked like layers of deceit. We had 3 missions. Confirm visual contact with Rachel and Greta, obtain photographic evidence, access their cabins if possible. It didn't take long to spot them. Greta emerged first, laughing way too. Loud for that early in the morning, wearing a red bikini top and sheer wrap that left little to the imagination. Brent, her friend, trailed behind her with 2 drinks in hand. His hand hovered dangerously close to her lower back. Then came Rachel. My wife. She wore that orange bikini, the one I had found hidden beneath her folded sweaters. Her hair was braided, her skin glowed with sunscreen, and her smile, it wasn't the one I knew. It was freer, flirtier, and beside her, of course, was Matt Clayton, early 40s, salt and pepper beard, confident, touchy. His hand rested on Rachel's, hip like it belonged there. I had to force my fists to unclench. Derek muttered, "That's her favorite bikini. She told me it was retired." I pulled out the camera and snapped the first few shots, wide-angle, candid, undeniable. They boarded a shuttle headed for a beach resort outside town. We paid a local driver to follow from a distance. The whole way, I kept seeing Rachel's laugh in my head. Not because it brought me joy, but because I finally knew it had never truly belonged to me. At the beach, we watched from under a thatched roof bar, ordered beers we didn't drink, took photo after photo. Rachel and Matt sunbathing, giggling in hammocks. Greta sitting on Brent's lap, hands stroking his chest like they were honeymooners. Derek zoomed in on a moment when Greta leaned in and kissed Brent on the neck. "That's all I need," he said, voice low. When Rachel took Matt's hand and led him behind a beach cabana, I looked away. I didn't need to see more, I didn't want to. But the camera still clicked. We left before they returned, avoiding any chance of being spotted. The ride back to town was quiet, tense, a storm brewing, beneath our silence. Back at the motel, we loaded the photos onto my laptop and started crafting a digital portfolio. We selected the most damning images. Then we wrote the email. Subject: "Your spouse is having the time of her life, without you." Attached were 12 high-res photos. Recipients: their co-workers, family members, neighborhood association emails. And, most painfully, the PTA group chats. Derek hesitated before hitting send. "You sure about this?" I stared at the screen. The betrayal was permanent, so the consequences should be too. "Yeah," I said, pressing the button. "They wanted freedom. Let's show them what it costs." We thought that would be enough. But karma wasn't finished. Later, That evening, while sipping coffee at a diner near the port, I received a message from a blocked number. "I know what you're doing. You better stop before someone gets hurt." I showed it to Derek. He read it, blinked once, then said, "Someone's scared." He was right. But we hadn't even started the real payback yet. The next morning began not with sunlight, but with strategy. Derek was already awake, sitting cross-legged on the motel floor, sorting through printed photos like a detective mapping a crime scene. I handed him coffee, black and bitter, just like everything we were feeling. "They know," I said, breaking the silence. He didn't look up. "Good. Let them feel what we felt." We'd taken down cheaters before, but this was something more. It wasn't just revenge anymore, it was control, precision, power. This wasn't chaos, it was a plan. We headed back toward the cruise ship, blending again with the tourist crowd, our faces hidden beneath sunglasses and baseball caps. Derek had rigged a small GoPro into the strap of his backpack. I had a lav mic in my shirt collar, synced with my burner phone. Our goal today, confrontation and recording. We followed them onto a snorkeling tour, $89 per person, but worth every cent for the vantage point it gave us. From our spot near the back of the boat, we captured hours of footage, Rachel leaning into Matt's shoulder, Greta feeding Brent grapes like a Roman empress. Their smiles were easy, casual, like this wasn't a betrayal, like we didn't exist. At one point, Rachel adjusted Matt's collar and kissed his neck. I felt something crack inside me, but no rage, just a cold, final click. A mental trigger. Pulled. "They're gone," I muttered. Derek didn't respond. He was too focused on steadying the camera. When the tour docked back at the ship, we peeled off and boarded using a special vendor pass we had arranged through a connection of Derek's. Now we were on the inside. We didn't go to our old rooms. We booked new ones 2 decks above. From there we scouted, we mapped, we waited. That night we saw them again at a poolside party. Rachel wore the black dress she'd once worn on our anniversary. Now it wrapped around her like a lie tailored to another man's desire. She danced with Matt, slow, confident, her head on his chest. I could almost hear the fake laughter, feel the false intimacy she used to save for me. Derek tapped my arm. "They're moving." We followed them through the rear stairwell, silent and deliberate, up to cabin 115, Rachel's room. They went inside, door shut. We waited. Exactly 19 minutes later, Matt re-emerged, shirt half-buttoned, wearing a grin that made my blood freeze. He walked away, whistling. Derek and I approached the cabin door. I knocked. Rachel opened the door, still in that damn dress, a drink in her hand, eyes widening when she saw me. Tom, what the hell, I didn't speak. I simply lifted the phone and showed her the photos. Her on the beach, her in Matt's arms, her smiling into betrayal. She didn't deny it, didn't speak, she just closed the door. I stood there waiting, not for an explanation, but for the silence to finish speaking. Derek turned to me, one down, but we both knew the war wasn't over. Now it was time to go home and detonate everything we had. We flew home under the radar. No goodbyes, no explanations. Just 2 broken husbands with memory cards full of betrayal and hearts hollowed out like old barns. Derek didn't speak on the plane, neither did I. The silence wasn't awkward, it was full. Full of everything we couldn't say yet. By the time we landed back in Tennessee, our plan had matured into something darker. We weren't just exposing their infidelity. We were going to burn the world they built with it. We got to work that same night. Derek had access to Greta's cloud storage. She once used his laptop to sync vacation photos. A few password guesses later, and we were in hundreds of images. Some were innocent, family BBQs, kids' birthdays, but others, hotel rooms, intimate selfies. One with Brent in just a towel, kissing her neck, time-stamped the same weekend she'd told Derek she was on a wellness retreat. He stared at that photo for a long time. "I bought her that towel set," he muttered. We pulled every compromising image, every suggestive text, and compiled it into a timeline. Then we did the same with Rachel. Her emails, her Venmo payments to Matt labeled beach drinks, Uber receipts from hotel addresses, and a note in her iPhone that simply read, "Clayton's fave wine, Merlot, Dark chocolate, soft jazz, massage. Oils? It hit me like a sucker punch. They had built rituals, private languages, little romantic traditions that I once thought were ours, and now they were someone else's. But I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I organized, emails were drafted. Subject lines like urgent, employee ethics violation, Rachel Connor. Greta Bartel, inappropriate conduct, see attached. Attached were full dossiers, photos, timelines, receipts, even video clips, labeled clearly and cleanly. We BCC'd HR directors, school board leaders, church council members, neighbors, even their favorite social circles on Facebook. Derek sent out the first wave. He didn't flinch. I used to be the guy who fixed fences on weekends, he said, eyes locked on the screen. Now I'm taking down people instead. We hired a local investigator to physically deliver manila envelopes to their offices. No postage, no warning. Just cold, hard evidence in the hands of anyone who mattered. And we didn't stop there. We posted anonymously on local forums. Warning, infidelity ring among community professionals, full exposure coming soon. We knew they'd panic. We wanted them to panic. By the following afternoon, we had confirmation. Rachel was escorted out of her office in front of half the staff. Greta's supervisor issued an emergency meeting regarding recent developments. The house of cards had begun to fall, but the part I didn't expect was the message from Matt's wife. From Madison Clayton, subject, "We need to talk." "I think we've both been played, Mr. Connor. I have something you'll want to see." And just like that, we realized the war had more players than we thought. I met Madison Clayton at a diner just off Highway 71. A quiet place, booths with ripped vinyl, and waitresses who called you hun, no matter your age. She was already there when I arrived. Tall, composed, a little pale, but with fire in her eyes. She didn't offer pleasantries, just slid an envelope across the table. Inside, printed screenshots, emails, photos, Matt and Rachel. Texts that started months before the cruise. A rental car bill from a weekend in Nashville. A hotel key. Card labeled, "Welcome back, Mr. Clayton." So this wasn't some heat-of-the-moment cruise fling. It had been going on far longer than I knew. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked. Madison's smile was bitter. "Because I'm done being the quiet wife in the background. And I think you are too." She wasn't wrong. "I want full custody," she said plainly. "Matt doesn't get to cheat on me and then try to play Disney dad when it's convenient. And I want your help." I nodded. "You'll have it." We became something like co-generals in a private war. She had friends in civil, court. I had connections in media. We shared resources, matched timelines, pooled documentation. We crafted a narrative so tight, so backed by receipts, that no family court in the state would question our motives. Meanwhile, Derek wasn't sitting still either. He'd taken our info on Nancy, the travel agent who helped book the cabins, and gone deeper. Turns out Nancy didn't just facilitate romantic escapes. She ran a side business, organizing girls' getaways for married women under the guise of empowerment retreats. But dig further, and you'd find reviews on private forums, whispered recommendations for discreet arrangements. "She's basically a damn madam," Derek muttered. He contacted a lawyer, a reporter, and quietly the IRS. The dominoes were lining up. Fast. But none of us saw what was coming next. It happened on a Tuesday night. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Check your porch." I stepped outside and found a box. No note, no markings, just a sealed cardboard cube. I opened it with a kitchen knife, hands trembling. Inside, Rachel's wedding ring, our old anniversary photo cut in half, and a pregnancy test. Positive. My knees buckled. It couldn't be mine. The timeline didn't work. We hadn't been together in months. I didn't know what kind of game this was, but it changed everything. And I knew the final round was coming, not in secret, not in whispers, but in court. By the time we filed the petitions, the storm had already begun. Rachel tried calling, 10 times. No voicemail, just the sound of her name on the screen like a siren. I didn't pick up. Instead, I was at the courthouse, standing next to Madison. Both of us holding stacks of documents thicker than a divorce attorney's moral compass. "Custody full," Madison told her lawyer. "Restraining order," I told mine. Our requests were not emotional. They were surgical. We had photos, recordings, hotel logs, witness statements, even GPS pings. We weren't just spouses seeking justice, we were plaintiffs in a carefully constructed war of facts. Derek, meanwhile, had triggered the IRS audit on Nancy's travel agency. Apparently her wellness getaways were being promoted through offshore servers and processed through dummy corporations. 3 agencies were now investigating her for tax fraud, unlicensed matchmaking, and conspiracy to commit adultery. She went radio silent after that, but it was the subpoenas that delivered the killing blows. Court-ordered demands for workplace records. Security camera footage from hotel lobbies, even a private investigator's drone footage from a beach in Montego Bay. And then the day came. The custody hearing. Rachel showed up looking like the ghost of the woman I married, hair disheveled, makeup hiding stress lines, a sweater 2 sizes too big like she was trying to shrink herself from judgment. Her lawyer tried to push a narrative of emotional instability caused by abandonment. My lawyer stood calm, clear, played the footage, Rachel laughing in a bikini wrapped around Matt, Rachel texting, "I can't wait to get away from him for good," Rachel packing 20 condoms for a girls-only cruise. The judge didn't say much. He didn't have to. He signed full temporary custody to me on the spot. Rachel gasped, reached out to me in the hallway. "Tom, please, let's talk." I looked her in the eye for the first time in weeks. "We already did," I said. "You just weren't listening." Meanwhile, Madison's case hit even harder. Turns out Matt had been using joint funds to book luxury stays for Rachel. Even tried to open a joint account with her, without finalizing the divorce. The court called it financial recklessness and moral breach. Madison walked out with sole custody, spousal support reversed, and Matt ordered into parenting classes, before supervised visitation. Back at Derek's end, Greta had gone underground, quitting her job, changing her number. But the court couldn't ignore Derek's dossier. He got full custody of the girls, 3 fathers, 3 courts. One message, you. Play games, we end them. It didn't happen all at once, but piece by piece, their worlds began to collapse. Matt was fired 2 days after the court ruling, not quietly either. The HR department cited gross misconduct and reputational damage to the firm. Tried to appeal. He lost. Within a week, his name was removed from the firm's website. His LinkedIn went silent. Madison told me his family wasn't even returning his calls. As for Rachel, word spread fast. Her image, once polished, professional, respected, was now a punchline. She withdrew from every local committee. Her gym membership was cancelled. A flyer went up at the kids' school. Reminder to parents, please maintain respectful behavior in the community. They didn't name her. They didn't have to. Greta, meanwhile, had fled to her sister's house in Nevada, but word followed her. Derek's sister Beth called one night. You should have seen Greta's face when she walked into the school for pickup. 3 moms turned their backs on her. One of them said, "She's lucky anyone lets her on campus." Greta took her daughters out of school the next day. No one's seen them since. Then, the interviews began. One blogger I'd sent evidence to did a deep dive titled, "Cruise. Control. How adulterers use luxury travel to cheat." It exploded. Thousands of shares, Reddit threads, podcast invites. They didn't name us, but our story became legend, and suddenly Rachel's shame was global. She tried to reclaim her narrative, posted a long Facebook status about emotional neglect and self-discovery. The comments were brutal. One person replied, "You packed 20 condoms for a girls-only cruise. That wasn't self-discovery. That was sabotage." I didn't comment. I didn't need to. Her silence afterwards said enough. But revenge, it fades. Justice has a half-life, and when it's over, you're left with what remains. Derek told me one night, sitting on his back porch with a beer in hand, "You know what hurts more than what she did? It's that I let her become a stranger right in front of me." I knew what he meant. Rachel's betrayal didn't just end our marriage. It erased the version of her I used to believe in. I started therapy. So did Madison. Derek found comfort in coaching his daughter's softball team. None of us wanted to be bitter men forever, but we also didn't forget, not because of spite, but because we earned the right to remember. 6 months later, I sat in the bleachers at Jason's little league game, a hot dog in one hand, a camera in the other. He'd just scored his first run of the season. His smile lit up the entire field. Beside me sat Madison, sipping iced tea, her daughter braiding friendship bracelets a few seats down. We weren't a couple, not yet, but something real had begun between us, not built on trauma. Not on shared pain, but on resilience, on the kind of quiet understanding that comes from two people who've seen the worst and still choose to hope. Derek showed up halfway through the third inning. He never missed a game now. He brought his girls cotton candy and joked with the parents like the past never happened. But we remembered. We remembered the cruise, the betrayal, the fire we lit in response, and we also remembered what came after. Not bitterness, not revenge, but rebirth. Watched my son high-five his teammates. I watched Madison laugh at something Derek said, and for the first time in a long, long time I felt safe. That night, while tucking Jason and Todd into bed, Jason whispered, "You're the best dad in the world." I blinked away the tears because I wasn't always sure I deserved that title. But I'd fought like hell to earn it back, and I would keep fighting every day, not to punish, not to destroy, but to protect my sons, to protect the life we were rebuilding, to protect the man I'd become when everything else burned, and maybe someday, just maybe, when the time was right, to let someone love me again, but this time only the ones who stayed. Freedom isn't free. It doesn't come wrapped in applause or delivered by some grand moment of justice. It comes quietly, through the hollow ache of empty houses, awkward silences, and long drives home with no one waiting on the porch. But it comes, and I learned to welcome it. Months passed. I sold the old house, too many ghosts in the walls, bought a smaller place in a quieter town, built new routines with Todd and Jason, movie nights, pancake Sundays, morning bike rides. We laughed more now, not because life was perfect, but because it was real. One afternoon, while unpacking boxes, Jason found a photo of our old family trip to Yosemite. Rachel had her arms around all of us. "Do you ever miss her?" he asked. I thought about it. "Sometimes," I said honestly. "But mostly I miss the version of her that loved us." He nodded, then folded the photo and tucked it in a drawer. "We don't need it on the fridge anymore." A few weeks later, Madison invited us to a backyard BBQ. There was no pressure, no agenda, just kids running barefoot, grilled corn on the cob, and stories around a fire pit. Her daughter and my boys got along like they'd grown up together. As the night settled in, Madison handed me a lemonade and said, "We're not broken people, you know. We're just people who've been broken and rebuilt better." I smiled, not because I'd moved on, but because I was moving forward. Derek texted that night. "Greta filed for bankruptcy. Calvin dumped her. Karma's working overtime." I replied simply, "She earned it." That was the last time we spoke about them, because some ghosts don't deserve attention. They deserve silence, and silence is a freedom too.